A lot of people think that commercial fishermen spend all their time out fishing, chasing fish, and that's the biggest part of the job. And of course, it is. But at the same time, maintaining your boat, maintaining your safety equipment, maintaining the gear you use to catch the fish are all really important aspects of being a fisherman. And often that's what makes the difference between a good fisherman and a bad fisherman is how good they are at maintaining their vessels and their fishing gear. So we spend a lot of time working on our boats. And to operate a boat effectively, you have to be a plumber, an electrician, a mechanic. You kind of have to be a little bit of everything, a jack of all trades. And so we put in a lot of time getting ready to go fishing. And then when you're out fishing, there's always things that crop up. There's always an air leak in your fuel supply or something that's causing your engine to die. And you got to fix that on the fly, or your hydraulic line bursts and you got to splice a hydraulic line when you're out on the grounds, and you might have gear in the water, and there's all this stuff you have to learn how to do. So I wanted to make these videos so I could share with you guys more about the commercial fishing lifestyle and what it actually takes to catch these fish, what it takes to bring them to market, and just about how we live our lives. Commercial fishing is more than just a job. It's a lifestyle. It's a culture. People have a lot of history in the fishery, multiple generations. A lot of families fish together. They'll have little toddlers running around the boat as they're trying to land monster halibut or chase king salmon offshore. That's the way I grew up, is being on a boat all the time, learning from my parents. I probably should have paid more attention when I was a kid, but you know how kids are. They always want to they don't ever want to learn from their parents. In this video, I'm going to show you a little bit of the prep work that goes into getting ready for the commercial salmon trolling season. I also fish halibut and black cod, but the bulk of my fishing is targeting salmon. The way the troll fishing works is that we're dragging lures or bait through the water at like 2 to 3 miles an hour, just like you would if you were sport fishing on a lake somewhere for walleye or trout or whatever. But we just use more gear. And the way it works is we have 4 wires that are hung off of outrigger poles, and those wires are connected to 60-pound cannonballs that will hold all the gear down at whatever depth we want to be fishing at. And then we'll clip lures at certain intervals onto that wire, so that each wire might be fishing anywhere from 4 to 20 lures. 2 of those wires are fished directly off of our outrigger poles, and 2 more are drugged behind on floats. Trolling's my favorite fishery in that it's not the most back-breaking fishery, it's not the most intense, it's a long grind, but it's the most similar to sport fishing. You're tricking each fish individually into biting. You gotta find the fish, and then when you bring them on board, they're just connected by a thin fishing line, and you actually fight them kind of hand over hand to get them on board. So there's more of a connection between you and the fish. This here is my secret hoochie and spoon stash. This one is mainly just targeted for king salmon, but I got a lot of varieties of hoochies that I like to use. Hoochies are these little rubber squids. They imitate a bait fish or a squid. They kind of just look like whatever the fish wants them to look like, depending on what color you have, how you have them rigged up, by which I mean size of the hook, the length of the leader. And this goes behind, and they go behind one of these. This is the whole setup. It's a hoochie and a flasher. So we use this clip and we clip onto the wire, and then this is pulled behind the wire, And because it's got these curves, these bevels here, the water will cause it to spin, and the back of the flasher will kick every time it spins. And that will drag the hoochie through the water, giving it a circular flicking motion, which is really what makes the fish strike. You could drag the hoochie by itself without the flasher, and you might never catch a fish. Well, you probably catch a few, but you're going to catch a small percentage compared to having this flasher. Additionally, the flasher, as it spins, creates pressure and noise that attracts the salmon, which the salmon sense using their lateral lines and also just their standard hearing. And it'll bring the salmon in from quite a ways away. So it's an attractor as well as giving life to the hoochie, and that's what'll cause the fish to bite. Commercial fishermen will tend to use these hoochies more than bait because, for one thing, you have to pay for the bait, whereas these will catch many fish before getting ruined, and they will tend to catch less non-target species. And they're just quicker. When you're rigging up a herring to fish with, it takes time to rig up the herring, takes time to salt it down, and often when you're fishing, time is money. Because the fish, well, you guys know how it is when you're out fishing. You don't usually catch a fish every half hour. You catch, I don't know, 5 fish in a half hour, and then you fish for 4 hours and don't catch anything. And salmon are just the same way. You'll have these times when the fish are biting, and as a fisherman, you really have to take advantage of that small moment. You might make your whole day in an hour. Another other gear we use are these spoons. I usually like to run like a mix of spoons and hoochies. Most people, I think, do the same. And it sort of just varies by day. What the fish are biting, what bait is around, the individual run of fish. But yeah, we always keep a variety of colors. We got greens, blues, big ones, small ones that look like herring, ones that look like sand lance, ones that look more like squid. Occasionally we use these. These are plugs. In my experience, they're a little more hit and miss, but when they're biting plugs, it's super fun to catch the salmon on the plugs because you'll run it on a real long leader, and so you'll have to pull them in hand over hand for like up to 60 feet, and that'll just be like you have more of a connection with that fish as you're fighting it with a line. You're not using a pole. You're not using anything mechanical. It's just you, your hands, and a pair of gloves. And then you're working it up to the boat, and the fish will be jumping. And often these, I guess because they're a bigger bait, will catch a bigger fish. And we all like to catch big fish. But I love this compartment. It was a good carpenter who worked this into the boat. This here is my Coho gear. It's sort of my favorite gear because it's also brightly colored. We actually tend to use, or I should say I tend to use a smaller variety of Coho gear than I do of king salmon. I think with Coho salmon, it's mostly just about finding the fish and staying on the fish and being there when they're biting. But it's basically the same gear. I actually really enjoyed this gear just because it's so bright. It's kind of like an art show. So today we're going to be replacing our blocks. They're round, even though we call them blocks. And there's an inner sheave here that spins freely, and the troll wire goes over that, and that prevents the wire from being pulled over a sharp edge, which will mess up the twist of the wire, and it'll cause your wire to kink and to break eventually if this doesn't spin freely to relieve stress on it. And since the wire itself is worth probably like $150 for each spool, and we have 4 spools, so it's like $600 a wire. You really want to be careful with your wire and keep it in good working order. And so each spool will have 2 of these that work together to relieve stress on the wire. Even just 1 or 2 sets over a stuck block will trash your wire And if that wire breaks, you'll lose the value of the wire, which is like $150. You'll lose your cannonball, which is about $180 per cannonball for 60. They're usually 50 to 60 pounds of lead. Lead is $3 to $3.50 a pound, depending on where you buy it. So it could even be like $210. And then also, depending on the fishery, you might have several $100s of gear on each wire, each spool as well. So if you break off a wire, especially near the top, you can lose that cannonball, $200. You lose the wire, $150, so $350. You lose $300 worth of fishing gear, and then you're out $600. And then even worse than that is the actual fishing time that you lost, because it seems like you never have a gear failure when the fishing is slow. So we want to keep these in good working order. While I was replacing those blocks, I found that the bands that the blocks had been hanging off of on the davit had been made of bronze, and over time that had caused corrosion as the two dissimilar metals interacted, because the davit's made of aluminum and the block hanger was made of bronze. So that ate away and pitted the aluminum, weakening it. So I decided to get a size larger pipe and put it over the davit like a sleeve to add extra strength to the davit, just in case the cannonball or something snags up on a rock, and you'll get tons of pressure on that davit. So I was worried about the corrosion that had pitted the smaller aluminum. So I think it'll be good to go with the sleeve over it. Well, now that we got all our blocks changed off our davits, I'm going to go ahead and replace the wire that is on the Gertie spools. The Gerties here, they're actually powered by hydraulics taken off of the main engine. And this is what raises and lowers our line so that we can haul in our gear or set our gear. And so we're going to replace the wire that's on the Gerties. So we have fresh spools of wire to put on the Gerties, but the first task is to strip all the old wire from last year off. After stripping off all the old wire, we replace the wire by firing up the engine and using the hydraulics to spool the wire onto the girders. Now that we have our wire put on the Gerties, we're going to have to splice in a thimble for a swivel to the cannonball. Those cannonballs are always spinning, and if you don't have a swivel on there, it'll ruin your wire. So we'll put on these swivels and braking straps that are designed to break off if the cannonball snags on a reef or something, so that you're left with all your gear that was on the wire and no damage to your davit. that's it for today. It's just a little bit of the work that goes into keeping a fishing boat running. I hope you found it at least a little bit interesting, and we'll see you next time.